Our final speaker of the day is Professor Esa Saarinen. Esa was a professor at Systems Analysis Laboratory between 2001 and 2008. Nowadays, he is a professor at the Department of Industrial Engineering and Management, but continues to work with us as the co-director of the Systems Intelligence Research Group. Welcome, Esa.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Peter was in our seminar yesterday, the one that Raimo and I have been running on Wednesdays since 2001. And of course we started the regular business as usual Finnish style, with power hugs and so forth. But now we have a larger scale to indicate a little bit to Peter, the Finnish style. So please stand up and generate appropriate hellen dynaamiset kohtaamiset, tender and dynamic moments of meeting, power hugs, cheek kisses, give me fives. Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to start out with a couple of somewhat personal points here, because like Peter, I believe in the kind of thinking where you look at abstractions as an instrument to your own personal growth, basically. And to that effect, it's essential, I think, to look at things from the point of view of one's own experience. Now, as far as I'm concerned, it's natural to look at things from the point of view of something like this. It's I mean, you could say that some of our features come out, some of our characteristics can be seen in the versions that we are at current time. But at the same time, to me, it's obvious that we also have aspects that for whatever reason haven't come out yet. And it's in this kind of context, which from my point of view isn't really even a philosophy, it's just a fact of the way a human being is constituted, where I place what Raimo and I have started to refer to as systems intelligence, as this is something that in Peter's talk very forcefully, from my point of view, came through in his emphasis of the fact that systems intelligence, the ability and desire and necessity to live in the context of interdependencies is innate in us. So it's not as if we are something constructed. So there's more to us than meets the eye. More that is good. That's to me the starting point. Now, think about the following incident. This was the first time I left my home after returning to that home from the hospital after my stabbing. So for the first time I thought that I would take a little bit longer walk. I felt strong enough to do that. So I was walking down Fredrikinkatu, and came to the corner of Erikinkatu, or Erik's Street. So I'm there at the corner of Erik Street, waiting for the light to change. And then I see this homeless couple on the other side of Erik Street, coming towards me from the other side. So they'll also wait for the lights to change. And then the lights do change, and I move forward, they move forward. Incidentally, both of us relatively slowly. I mean, I, because of the fact that I still felt feeble, and they for perhaps some other reasons. Anyway, we come very slowly to the center of that street, and then this lady recognizes me, and there right in the center of Erikinkatu, this radiant happiness comes to her face, and she says, using the polite form, of course very seldom used nowadays in the Finnish language, but using the polite form of addressing me, she says, great to see you up and well. Good luck to the future. In Finnish, hienoa nähdä teidät jalkeilla. Tsemppiä tästä eteenkin päin. Said this homeless lady in the middle of Erikinkatu. Now, if you think about systems intelligence, from the point of view of the factor analysis that we conducted, and we really did rather heavy work. It was Raimo, it was Juha Törmänen, some other people were also involved. I think we worked for over a year with the intention of trying to figure out what might be the, as it were, key factors of success in a context or in a whole or in a niche, if one uses that expression from Peter's speech. So we really worked pretty hard, and we came up with these 8 factors, and what's a little bit perhaps confusing about them is that they seem kind of heterogeneous or somehow incommensurable. So, but if you think about this lady I met, this homeless lady, let's say from the point of view of attitude, you could say that there was certain positive attitudes she had, also coming through that moment as something where she seized the moment. So you could say that she used the immediate situation in order to positively engage with somebody else, in this case me, with the idea of uplifting that other person. And all this, of course, hinged on her perceiving in some systemic terms the situation, so that you would create here something that would use implicit leverage factors in that situation, and perhaps would also carry to the future. Now, I would say that I will never forget this experience. So you could say that Peter's point of the innate nature of systems intelligence, in a sense, you could say, was brought home by the act of this homeless lady in the middle of Erikinkatu. If you think about these parameters, also reflection. Clearly she had reflected on what she had learned had happened to me the 5th of March. So maybe she had thought that, this is wrong. How is it possible that of all people this happens to Esa? Something like that. She reflected, put in perspective. And also doing that not as some kind of abstract reflection regarding something that is external to her, but something that might bear on her actual actions. And most certainly attunement, most certainly the connectivity that she established using her eyes, using her presence, was there. Now, when we started our work with what was to be called systems intelligence. This was pretty soon after I had the honor of joining the ranks of systems analysis laboratory at what was then Helsinki University of Technology. And what was great about that was that there wasn't any philosophy chair at the university, because this meant that I wasn't put into the format of an academic university professor. And this was one of Raimo's visionary ideas, because Raimo's idea was that, Esa, I think you should do what you've been doing all along in companies such as Nokia. This was the time of the miracle of Nokia emerging in 2001. That I joined the ranks. But what impressed me when I came here, what from my point of view was the chief engineering school of our country, was the fact that engineering thinking is exciting because it's so geared to making things better. So in a sense, engineering thinking, from my point of view, as a humanist myself, amounts to basically the thesis: if something doesn't work, fix it. I mean, they're very excited to fix things, these engineers. And it's almost, you could say, an erotic relation. But notice that, of course, if you start with the overall idea that if something doesn't work, fix it, it could be that what you identify as to something that doesn't work might be something relatively small in the context of something bigger, whether something bigger would be actually more important to fix than something small. So it could be in some cases, that the engineer, with his or her excitement to fix things, ends up, as it were, fixing too small things. Could be. So now, at the same time, me as a philosopher, as a humanist, I'm myself excited about the use of rational intellect. I had the honor of working in the research group of Professor Jaakko Hintikka, who was one of the leading researchers, you could say, in any field at the time. In the 70s, he was at the same time as he was research professor with Academy of Finland. He was also professor at Stanford. And his brilliance was so mesmerizing and so exciting. So I'm myself very excited about the use of the rational dimension that you have, and to develop it. And I got my doctorate at the age of 24, so on a very narrow work on philosophical logic. So I'm excited to use, as it were, that instrument. But the question is, why should one narrow oneself? Because you also have other aspects. For instance, you have your ability to feel something. I remember thinking, when looking into the history of philosophy and observing the fact that there is such tremendous emphasis when you look at history of philosophy, history of thinking, on knowledge. Thinking, why is this all this emphasis on knowledge? I mean, knowledge is certainly important, but isn't there a bit sort of an overemphasis in all this excitement about knowledge? I mean, why is it always knowledge? Why not, for instance, tenderness? Because a human being has also an ability not only to know something, but also for tenderness. I mean, you would expect there to be at least some excitement in this sort of phenomenon of tenderness, the ability to generate to somebody something just by the way you tenderly or acceptingly, generously, warmly attune to the other one, and then you, in a sense, give a gift to the other one just by being human to the other one. I mean, this is a human possibility. So I used to be kind of puzzled by the fact that there wasn't that much excitement in the institutions of higher education, to which the best enterprises you could expect come to develop themselves. For instance, in the theme of tenderness. So as we started our work with Raimo, with me excited of the fact that engineers are so excited of solving problems, of making things work, it was for me rather natural to sort of start to think about the kind of things that don't work from this sort of a little bit broader perspective, where basically you would bring the whole of your human capabilities to bear on the case of making things work. But of course, only some of those aspects of you as a human being that might bear on a case that doesn't work in order to make it work, for instance, can be put to words. It could be that some key aspects of what just now happened as you greeted, let's say, somebody behind you or in front of you, whom you probably didn't know before that took place, is something that even now you can't really describe exactly what happened. Because this is the way a human experience is constituted. It has aspects that are difficult to put in words, perhaps impossible to put in words, but it still exists. And the only question is, to what extent do we want to make use of that as part of the way we solve genuine, fundamental problems? Now, if you think about Peter's presentation just now, which of course was extremely powerful, I mean, probably you could say that in this auditorium, it's a beautiful Alvar Aalto auditorium. Quite a few lectures have been given here, but it's not often that you see tears in people's eyes, as you saw them when Peter closed. That's the way we are as human beings. We can experience the significance, which is beyond just knowing that X is significant, X is important. And to me, it seems so important that we open ourselves to the whole of our experience from the point of view of making things work. I mean, think about it this way. And now I'm, on the face of it, sidestepping a little bit, but please bear with me on this. I've been running something that gradually became known as the Paphos Seminar since '95. And quite a few here have been to the Paphos Seminar because it's something that people have started to gradually to appreciate as a possibility to reflect on the broader themes and perhaps to perceive some of the dynamisms of their lives, of course, also about themselves. So you sort of reconnect to some extent, I would say, in some contexts, to what Peter at the end referred to, which is you can reconnect with the love of your own life. So I would say that to some extent at least, over the years this has happened in the Paphos Seminar. But it's a sort of a strange seminar because nothing really is being taught. And it's also a very, very heterogeneous group of people that come. But it's something that people find inspiring. So a couple came. This is maybe 7-8 years ago. A couple came. They're my pretty good friends. So I knew the couple, and I knew the fact that they had tried to get a baby, but they hadn't been successful in that endeavor. In fact, they had a medical diagnosis to the effect that they can't have a baby together. Now, the medical diagnosis didn't take into account the Paphos Seminar. And what happened in the context of the Paphos seminar was that the couple was able to conceive in such a way that de facto a baby was born 9 months later. And it is, I heard about it, I was very excited, a Paphos baby is born, this is great. Now, meanwhile, as a projection of my interest, of those aspects of us as human beings that go beyond the narrowly rational, beyond what can be put to words, I had started to look into infant research. So research into very young human beings, let's say 3 months of age. One of the key researchers is Beatrice Beebe, working at Columbia University, who has a systemic view on the development of an infant. So I'm in one of the Helsinki cafes, the Cafe Engel at the Senate Square, and I'm reading one of Beebe's exciting articles. And then all of a sudden I see that a proud father and a baby come to the cafe. And I see this is, my good friend Yuri and the Paphos baby, whom I hadn't seen. I had only heard about the Paphos baby, so I'm very excited. So I started to wave to them that they would come to my table, and indeed they did come. And so there is this friend of mine, together with the Paphos baby. The Paphos baby by this time was maybe 3-4 months, so he was there on his father's lap, and the baby was like these babies are, bimbeli bam, kind of orientation to the overall situation, colors, interesting sounds, so forth, so he's there, bimbeli bam, kind of orientation. But I was so excited about the paper I had just been reading by Beebe on infant research. So I started to talk about this friend of mine, Yuri, some of the key points regarding infant research, the systemic perspective and so forth. So I really started to sort of put across some of the key points, and the baby who was there on his lap, who was this, bimbeli bam, all of a sudden became mesmerized. Clearly thinking, hey, this guy is talking sense. I have underestimated these adults. And now, of course, you could say that, well, probably it wasn't really, the content in abstract terms, the semantic content of you were putting forth to your friend that was the point from the point of view of the baby. Probably it was your orientation or energy or something like that. And you say, yeah, that probably is the case. It's interesting that the human being has capabilities for picking up from such sources. And in fact, this is one of the key points of infant research, that the infant at the age of, let's say, 3 months has such capabilities of linking up with another human being. In fact, it turns out that this is a key feature, you could say, source of some of the fundamental developmental processes. If for whatever reason this ability to connect disappears, one is in serious problems regarding the entire developmental process. So one might ask, well, does this ability disappear somewhere later on? And one of the key points of our systems intelligence inventory research was to find out that, well, this doesn't seem to be the case. Of course, you could say that makes sense. I mean, attunement to other people, maybe to parties that are in some sense agent-like is a human capability that all of us have. The only question is, to what extent do we make use of it? And here, a key challenge, I think, is now in the offing, because it could be, and now I come back to the fact that these 8 factors seem kind of heterogeneous. Now, let's assume, however, that these 8 factors would, at least on some level of abstraction, at least to some extent, actually describe how a human being can succeed in a whole, in a context, in a situation, in a systemic environment. You say, well, is it likely that such a capability of succeeding in a systemic environment in a context is likely to draw from various sources? It's not sort of as any one thing. I would say, yeah, it probably is something that draws from various sources. So you could say that, in fact, the fact that it's a little bit kind of a strange collection, perhaps also a little bit difficult to remember even. I've seen this in my lectures, in my teachings in corporate context. In corporate context, people easily feel that it's sort of too complex. I mean, that they might say, Esa, couldn't you have just 5? Couldn't you sort of squeeze those to 5? It's 8, it's a little bit too much. Or they see somehow, as it were, to work in different dimensions. But I think this is a key, the fact that they are, in a sense, incommensurable. And the fact that they somehow are in different dimensions, because it means, from your point of view, that to the extent that these actually describe how you succeed in context, in situations, in systems, you probably are inclined to work through just some of them. Because you feel that it's, let's say, your rational intellect of figuring out the dynamics of a business context in business terms, looking at the business from outside, that you as a, let's say, strategy student should contribute from, given that you are this manager in company X. Or it could be that it's some particular way to model a whole that you learned with considerable effort in your years at your university. So therefore you have invested so much into that particular kind of way of understanding dynamics. That factor number 1, perceiving the system, gets, as far as you're concerned, stuck with a particular way of perceiving the system. So it could be that although in a meeting it's obvious that the meeting will succeed better if you attune at least minimally with those other people in the meeting, it could be that you still don't attune to those other people. You don't even shake hands with them. You can say, isn't this amazing? I mean, how could it be that these people can expect to come up with something great if they don't even acknowledge one another, even on such a minimal level? I mean, the fact is that most lectures everywhere in the world start in such a way that people come to a space like this, not necessarily as beautiful as this is, to a space like this, and then they expect the lecture to start. Then the lecture starts, and it starts by the lecturer coming to the front and starting to lecture. You can say, well, couldn't these people, before the lecture started, couldn't they have connected in some way? I mean, as human beings, you are still conscious of the person behind you and in front of you. So it could be that on some instinctual level, you feel to some extent threatened, just a little bit by the person behind you, in a way that you wouldn't feel threatened if you would, let's say, greet the person and see that this is a well-meaning person. But because of the fact that we narrow down so drastically, this is from my point of view, we narrow down so drastically what we are as human beings, that we don't acknowledge this aspect of us. So one of the key ideas of systems intelligence, as far as I'm concerned, has been this effort to try to reintroduce the whole spectrum of humanity to us, in the context of succeeding, in the context of wholes. So, therefore, the Paphos baby example, the homeless couple example, I think is something that highlights that dimension that is, as Peter emphasized, something that is innate in us, but the fact that it's innate in us doesn't mean that it will come out or get nurtured or would get the kind of attention it deserves from the point of view of getting the relevant things done. Now, take a look at this this line or this phrase, the better angels of our nature. This is from Abraham Lincoln, from the very end of his first inaugural address. He is days away from civil war, in a situation where a large part of the United States base its economic system on slavery, which means that a lot of good people have actual interest in the continuation of slavery de facto. A lot of good people. In fact, most people are ordinary people. So in this situation, in which slavery is part of the economic system in many states of the United States that he is the president of, in a situation where, as a result of this, the civil war is pending, is maybe just days away, he concludes his inaugural address by referring to the better angels of our nature. Now, of course, this is a metaphor. But from my point of view, it's an exciting metaphor. It brings, from my point of view, us back to where we started. There's more to us than meets the eye, more that is good. Just one way to sort of put that in a bit more poetic way. Now, this was 1861, and of course you could say, given that it's a line from Lincoln, it might seem that it's rather distant. But if you take into account the fact that my grandmother, that was very, very close to me because she lived in that house to which I was born in Hyvinkää, and she was always there when I came from school, had been born 1900. She passed away 1992 at the age of 91. She had gone. She had 4 years of elementary school, but when she passed away in 92, I would say she passed away as somebody whom everybody that knew her loved, somebody whom everybody that knew her respected. But she had been born 1900. I asked my mother, when was Mamses, as we called her, when was Mamses' father born? And my mother said, well, Joppi Papa was born 1851. So the father of my grandmother was 10 years of age when Abraham Lincoln delivered these lines. So in a sense, you could say it's not really that far. I think it also highlights the fact that systems can change. I think it highlights the fact that the better angels of our nature can fly higher. Particularly if we start to appreciate what the systemic context actually is, which of course in many cases requires tremendous use of our intellect. And so the fact that intellect can take us too far in the sense that we take too many of its suggestions overly seriously at the expense of something else, doesn't mean that we shouldn't develop ourselves to the full in that realm also. It's just that there are also other realms. And it's those other realms, those other, as it were, ways of us using our human capabilities, that our systems intelligence initiative, if one thinks about it that way, tries to highlight. And if I put that in the context of Lincoln's phrase, I would say that, well, in order for the better angels of our nature to fly further, we need to use our system's intelligence. We need to use those different dimensions that we have. On the one hand, to comprehend, to perceive what the systemic environment is, to attune with other parties, be it those other human beings or some other parties. We need to seize things in order to get things done, but at the same time also to perceive the force of time, that is the fact that certain effects take time to show up. To have positive attitude, because in many situations your attitude is what carries over the immediate situation, because facts don't deliver hope per se. And you need to try things out. So you want to see if something that hasn't been done before maybe now would work. So you meet somebody and all of a sudden you do that encounter slightly differently as compared to the way you would do an encounter in some other context. And you do all that with positive engagement because you want the other one to be uplifted by that little contribution you bring to the situation with your system's intelligence. So that's where I'd like to stop, and then thank you for your attention. Thank you.